Okay, so I wanted to make a recording of my plans for my Essence Strain character for 3.3. There isn't really anything that has changed for Essence Strain other than the fact that aspect of the spider is no longer obtainable, most likely. Um, so I'm on an Occultist now, and I'm starting on an Occultist just to talk about why I won't play an Occultist over my Trickster. Um, there were primarily two reasons. One being that Occultists are much slower than a Trickster. Now I'm using Breath of the Council, and with a clear speed focused dagger it's better, but it's still not fast for shield charging. But if this kind of shield charge speed is fine for you, then Occultist will most likely be very comfortable to play. For bossing though, there is a very big issue with Occultist, and that is the duration on Blight, since we really rely on stacking 20 stacks of Blight in addition to keeping our Wither Totem up, casting Contagion for our buffs, and applying Essence Drain to the target. As an Occultist, even with Breath of the Council, I don't get to 20 stacks at all. With my current cast speed, the debuff would have to last for 5 seconds in order to get to max stack. This isn't entirely realistic what we're looking at now, because I don't have any jewels in my tree, so I could focus a lot more on cast speed there. But you still have to factor in that you are placing totems, you are casting Contagion, and you are applying Essence Drains, which of course means that you don't channel Blight during that time. So realistically, during a boss fight, an Occultist would only have 10 or 15 stacks of Blight on a target. And let's just keep these numbers in mind when we go to the Trickster character. This one. I'm just using... This is basically just the character that I played last league, so I still have aspect of the spider and stuff like that, but it will work as a way to show my intent for the league. I will most likely drop Despair and the Jewel Curse and just run Temporal Chains and run a rare amulet to make balancing stats easier, but we'll get to that a bit later. Let's first look at Blight. No, that's Essence right now. Here we go, Blight. As you can see, on the Trickster, I have like 2 more casts per second just by default. Oh, this is with the cast speed dagger. 1.5 more casts per second. That's a bit of an overstatement, but you get the idea. And the debuff lasts longer due to the increased duration on prolonged pain. So just by standing around, we see that it should be quite easy to stack 20 stacks of Blight. In addition, when you need to shield charge, there we go. The Trickster gains even more cast speed, and there we go with Arcane Surge, and we are nearly at 7 casts per second, which makes it easier to get to max stack, and then you can disengage, cast your other utility spells, stuff like that, and then continue channeling Blight, which will make it easier to stay at 20 stacks and most likely provide a more realistic, higher DPS than the Occultist. Now for the gear progress. with Val Blight being introduced, I really want to try it out, but that means we have to change around the gear somewhat. My plan is to play as I always do and just play Self-Hound until I've killed Kitava and started mapping, and then I'll get my Allelopathy as soon as I can when I start mapping. This only gives me a normal Blight, but that's fine since the build will work exactly like it has done for the past 2-3 leagues anyway. And I will level up an extra set of 4 gems and when they get to 20, I'll buy a Hungry Loop and feed the support gems to it, so that when my gems are ready, I have my Hungry Loop. And with the Hungry Loop, I can eventually replace Allelopathy with just some rare gloves, and then replace a ring with the Hungry Loop. Place Essence Strain in the Hungry Loop and Blight in the 6-link. Doing this, the DPS of Essence Strain will drop quite drastically. 57k in the ring and 85 in the body armor 6-link. And Blight doesn't do that much more damage either. Since Allelopathy gives a level 22 Blight, and it's gonna be very hard to get a level 21 Val Blight. So realistically we're talking about the same Blight DPS. But I really think it's gonna be worth it with the interaction of Val Blight. Since Val Blight makes it easier to get more uptime on spreading rot on boss fights, since it does not rely on the target not being affected by Blight to begin with. But if you're really interested in min-maxing, you're gonna have to read up a little bit on that yourself. I'll just run a map real quick with this setup. I have a tier 15 map here with a more monster life modifier, just to see if the DPS, well, the low DPS of Essence Strain in the Hungry Loop is comfortable to map with. I don't have capped resists, so hopefully it's gonna be just fun. Oh, where's my Blight? On the wrong button. There we go. So I expect that I will have to rely a bit more on channeling Blight and using Val Blight for the actual mapping, but considering this is a tier 15 map with monster life, it doesn't look too bad even with just a 5-link Essence Strain. And the Val Blight really should make up for it when you get to the tanky stuff. I'll just run to the boss real fast. Oh, a breach. That's nice to see how everything works. Sincha you. So yeah, I'd say this clear speed is acceptable. If you get mods like both life and chaos resistance on the map, it will start being pretty painful with this essence drain DPS, but hopefully Blight will be able to carry in those situations when you get to blue packs. And let's see, last but not least, playing with this setup frees up an entire gear slot for gems. So what I would do, and my plan, is to swap my wither setup, or whatever setup really, into my gloves instead, and use something like a cast when damage taken setup in my boots. This will allow me to swap out my boots for Chaos Roots, for Uber Elder, which should make the fights more doable for the build, and especially if Blight is going to be a reliable damage source during the fight. Due to its interaction with Spreading Rot, it should be a drastic DPS increase even on triggered fights. So yeah, hopefully this was informative for what's in store for Essence Drain Blight characters in 3.3, and my profile will always be public, so you can check out my character and see how I progress and what I do with my character once the league starts.